and welcome to the Lessons in Living podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Vinder, and today I am really excited to welcome on Sam Macaulay, who is a super impressive runner who actually came fourth in the Helsinki Marathon with a 2:41 marathon time. And he also has a 67-minute half marathon time under his belt, which is just crazy. And on top of being a super fast runner, Sam also holds down a day job as a researcher at the University of Oxford, although that is going to change next January. Exciting. But Sam, that is crazy. Those times are mental. Have you always run?
Yeah, I guess, well, thanks for the introduction. I wasn't expecting such a, nice, positive introduction. I feel like I have to disclaim that Helsinki's not exactly a big event. But yeah, it was still a cool success to get that placing. But yeah, so I suppose going back to like school, I was a cross country runner, did kind of regional representations for the school growing up, and did the inter-school cross country, was part of that inter-school cross country team before joining the first 11 and then becoming more of a footballer. But yeah, so always kind of playing football and then running, and I don't know, cross country and kind of those later years of high school.
Yeah.
So in that respect, yeah, the running's always been there.
That makes me feel better because I'm like, oh my gosh, your times to me. I mean, even though Helsinki's not a big one for you, for me, I'm like, oh my gosh, how has he done that? He must have been running since birth or something. That is so incredible. So it's nice to know that you've kind of always been running, because I've started my own running journey and I'm like, I just could not. My half marathon time is 2:41 probably.
Yeah. But that's the thing though. It's all relative, isn't it? And that's the first thing that I tell people is like, you shouldn't be try as least as possible. Try to minimize your comparison, or try to compare yourself with others as least as you can. The danger of the age we're in with Strava and everything is that comparison can become a bit of a problem.
Yeah, the comparison one's hard, and Strava is also, I mean, it's great. Like I joined it in June this year, which is kind of when I started my running. And it's been great to compare myself against myself and seeing the progression. That definitely motivates me. But you're so right. Like, definitely I shouldn't be comparing myself to you. But it just makes me kind of in awe, because I look at myself compared to you and I'm like, wow, he is doing the most. When you were running in high school, did you like it? Like, have you always liked running, or is it just something you've always done?
Yeah, I think like those early days of like cross country in childhood, it was probably just like, oh, you're good at this. Like, I've got that personality type where I just go and I try and do the best at anything that I do. Like, I've got that kind of achiever strength, if you know the strengths finders. So I want to do well. I want to push myself in pretty much anything that I put my mind to. So whether that was cross country as a 5-year-old in the first sort of year at school and just going out and doing it as fast as I could, you naturally just kind of then get put in the cross country team. And I don't know, it's one of those weird things in childhood, isn't it? Sometimes you just do things because you end up doing them. But naturally, I think an enjoyment of that develops, and it's fun to be competing and things like that. So it was probably in 2015 when I took a year out from playing football. I started my postgraduate studies, doing an honours year. That was when I started running more just out of enjoyment, and did my first marathon that year. And that was probably where then the progression onto where I am now really began, and it became sort of something that I just found a lot of my fulfillment and enjoyment in.
Yeah. So did you, when you ran that marathon, did you was that like a decision where you're like, I guess I want to do another one? Or was it a decision of, I actually want to give this a proper go and keep going? And I don't know, how big of a decision was it?
Yeah.
Was it like a gradual progression or what?
Well, yeah, so I did that marathon in 2015, and then I missed the competitive team sport so much from that year. So I then played football again for another few years, and didn't run another road marathon until 2019. Although I started doing more trail running. So I did the Dunedin Three Peaks event, 3 Peaks plus one ultra, where I came third in that one year. And then 2020, I ended up winning the Mototapu off-road marathon, which was a big surprise. But it was probably at that point when I was like, yeah, I could probably push on with this and make something of it. Definitely didn't. I remember running that, and it was the COVID year, so March 2020. I sort of used that as an excuse again for maybe why I was able to win, because I reckon there would have been some faster people otherwise if the virus wasn't starting to make its way across the country.
Take the win, take the W, just take it. Don't overthink it.
Yeah. But I remember being up the front with the guy who came second, and we were sort of running along, and he turned to me and he's like, "Were you expecting to be up here?" And I was like, "Nope." So, but just pressed on, and so won that, and was like, I wanted to go back and try and defend that a couple of years, but then it was cancelled a couple of years in a row, and then we ended up moving over here. But yeah, so, and then over here in terms of the football side of things, it's just been the odd sort of five-a-side social. So this is where it's been like, okay, I can do the London Marathon, I can do like Berlin, I can do some of those big ones in Europe, Valencia, and it's so much access to those big events over here. So it was midway through last year, I joined a running club here, London Heathside, and went and did that Helsinki race to try and qualify for London next year, which I got. So it's kind of now that it's just like really progressing on, and I'm going to see basically how fast I can get in the next couple of years.
Yes. What does your training look like? What are the differences between what it looked like compared to 2015? Like, do you use a coach, or do you have programs through your run club? How have you done it?
Yeah, 2015, sort of starting running that marathon that year was just like a self-driven. I suppose I did follow, I think I was on Nike Run Club was the app that I joined. So before the days of Strava, or at least before I knew about Strava, it was probably around. But that was quite cool, because like that was just a place to record my own running, and coming back to that comparison aspect. I think, when I first got Strava again, like, I don't know, 2018 or so, I had like one mate who was my only follower for a good year or so. And like, that was, I think that's the best use of it, is just like as a place to record your own fitness and your own progression. Yeah. And then the inspiration aspect is the positive side, where you can then follow people and get inspired and encourage people, which is great.
Yeah.
But so the training was driven through just some sort of app. I think it was literally a coach plan in Nike Run Club that was like, build up to your first marathon. And most of those, like, they're all pretty good in terms of, there's a basic structure of, do 80% of your runs at an easy pace, and then 20% sort of pushing into your anaerobic threshold, or tempo runs, or some hill reps or something like that. So probably I did start doing that from that point, because I was being coached by that app. But I have found that, like, joining an actual running club does make a difference to like the intensity of those sessions. It's so much easier to push yourself a lot harder when you're going around with a group of people, as opposed to like just getting out by yourself and trying to hit an interval session on the road. It's always harder to like hit that max heart rate or that max pace. Yeah.
So you've never had a coach, like a proper...
No. So I don't have a personal coach. Yeah.
Wow.
So this year, the running coach who like coaches the couple of hundred people at the club is the only like coach, but again, that's still not personal. I suppose, I think I've kind of followed enough, people who run on YouTube and share things about their like enough elite runners to pick up what a coach would do. I have thought about like getting a personal coach, but at the moment I just kind of do what I need to do to, and the goals are working, sort of making PBs pretty much any race I do still. So yeah.
Cool. That's incredible. I'm going to say, that's one thing that I've noticed about starting to run in June, is just how inclusive the running community is, and how much knowledge is out there. Like you say, you don't need a coach. You can learn. I mean, ChatGPT definitely helps as well for me. But on YouTube, like you say, there's so much information and so many runners sharing so much, which I just don't think you get in other sports. I mean, you definitely don't get it in tennis. And then
sure, that's interesting.
Yeah, I'm like, my brother, for example, he is 400 in the world, and he was telling me how hard it is now to get information out of coaches and out of like the community. Nobody's really sharing the next kind of information that you need to progress. You have to pay for it. So, but running is totally different. And run clubs are great like that, you know, meeting people. I always thought, like, when I started my own running journey, it's just like a way that I could travel and stay fit. So I don't need a run club. I'll just put music on, blah, blah, blah. And then I joined one, and oh my gosh, it just changes. I mean, I don't know about you, but it changed my life. It was so good. Just the value from it.
It makes a big difference, I think. And I don't know why I put it off so long. I think I am quite like an individual kind of person, that I sort of just pursue things individually, generally. And even in terms of running, well, I always had like the odd kind of like one run a week where I might meet up with a bunch of guys and we'll go for a morning run. But yeah, it has, to anyone who is looking to like get into running and really, you know, push themselves and see what they can do, finding the local Harriers club, or running group, where you can get along and do like 1 or 2 evenings a week of sessions. And they have a coach there, generally, leading the sessions. It makes such a big difference, and the social side is huge as well.
Yeah, it's honestly, well, for me and my small knowledge of other sport communities, it's unmatched. I'm actually quite surprised at how inclusive it is. It's amazing. So talk to me about your mindset, because I went for a run this morning and I was hating it. Do you ever like feel that or dread going on a run, and how do you handle that?
Yeah, I think that probably a big shift again, although I always started some sort of training structure, like I said, according to a plan on that app, there was still an aspect where the runs were meant to be easy in that schedule. I would still probably go out way too hard and run sort of 75 to 85% of my heart rate, or effort. And it wasn't probably until, I'm not sure exactly when it happened, but maybe moving over here, and I just really started like trying to, like, zone 2 became a whole like thing. You know, it's funny how running has these fads where all the YouTubers or the vloggers or the influencers or whatever start like kind of going down the same route. And a few months ago, I think, it was zone 2, but I started basically just running easy. Before I knew it was like zone 2 and whatever that means, conversational pace running. And that changed the game for me, because I could enjoy like 75 to 80% of my runs just in a sense that I wasn't like coming back totally wrecked after that run. And so that's building that aerobic base, just working in kind of your sort of 60 to 75% of your max heart rate. And that made things so much more enjoyable from a perspective of, just being able to enjoy being outside and not feeling like I'm dying on a run. And then what it allows you to do is that kind of other 20 to 25%, where you're really pushing, you've kind of rested a little bit more in those easier runs, and then you can really push on your tempo or your threshold interval sessions, which is where, and then you enjoy those a little bit more as well, because you're getting right into that anaerobic zone, and you get a different kind of endorphin hit from those sessions. So I think, that sort of 80-20 rule, easy, and like properly doing them easy, and then really properly doing hard runs hard, made the enjoyment aspect a lot more enjoyable.
Yeah, that's so true. And that's, I guess, the downfall of apps like Strava, isn't it? Because
the temptation is to you feel like you need to hit a certain pace for some reason, when like the reality is people don't care.
No, they don't care. I mean, it's just all about getting out there. But, that, I guess, and like you say, that stifles people running. People could be running, maybe 3-4 times a week, but they only run once a week because it's got to be something that you can be proud of. Do you know what I mean? Like, or something that is hard. It's a hard pace.
Yeah. Whereas when you can get out and just do whatever easy looks like for you, a pace that you feel like you could talk to someone while you're running along, then that means often you can get out a few more times a week, and you can enjoy it a lot more. And then also the injury side of things, becomes a lot more manageable because you're putting a lot less sort of pressure, a lot less strain through the soft tissues, so through your muscles and ligaments. And that was big for me as well, because I was finding I was like, as soon as I tried to increase my mileage a little bit, increase load while still running everything probably at a bit of a harder pace, harder effort, then I'd start to get problems in my calves and hamstrings. And so just dropping back some of that effort a little bit meant that I've been able to increase mileage and maintain being injury free, which has been awesome.
Yeah. You've segued into something that I'm super interested about, which is what else do you do on the side of running? Because I know from what I've seen from people on YouTube, runners on YouTube, everyone says gym, legs, they do cycling a little bit. What does a training week look like for you, I guess?
Yeah, I don't do a heap of gymming now that I'm increasing running a lot, because I'm already spending, well, now it's sort of upwards of 8 hours a week running. So basically a run every day with a couple of double days in there on a Tuesday or Thursday usually. I suppose like if I'm doing strength and conditioning, I mean, I've already got a bit of a like conditioned body. It kind of sounds weird, but from playing football a lot, like you naturally develop like quite strong legs. And I gymmed from like, 18 through to 25 quite a lot when I was at uni. And so like compared to runners that have always say been like hitting that elite, regional representation level on track or in longer distances, like I've got a little bit more body mass than a lot of those like super, super quick elite runners. But I do think that helps in terms of it's easier for me to kind of maintain that strength, and I don't maybe have to work quite so hard on the strength and conditioning. Having said that, one thing that I've implemented into my running in the last probably year or so has been always doing a warm-up, and that's something I probably learned at the running club, because we'll always warm up. The coach will take us through a warm-up before doing the drills. And so now I'll do a K and a half, or if I'm doing a long run, maybe I'll do a few Ks, and then I'll just stop and do a set of like, I'll do 20 lunges, do some single leg squats, do some dynamic stretching, like some, working groins, hip flexors, hamstrings, that sort of thing, just to, and that even those like just body weight levels, lunges or squats or something is going to be that strength aspect. So incorporating that into a run, and I literally do that every run, even if it's a 6 to 7K, which is my sort of shortest run that I'd probably go on. I'll stop after a K and I'll do that. And so that helps in terms of, getting the muscles warm. Whenever I find, once I've stopped and then started after a warm up, my legs are so much looser and I can just like go so much more smooth, after that point. And again, like that's another aspect that like, yes, elapsed time is longer than moving time on Strava, but no one cares. You'll enjoy the run so much more. So yeah, there's that strength aspect in there as well. And then again, I suppose post run, always doing some static stretching. And there was a lot of my running earlier on. I never warmed up. Like maybe I'd go out slower on the first K, but not even then. I'd probably still go out, go out hard. So I do think that like, and especially, getting into your 30s as well, like it becomes a lot more important to manage in terms of managing muscle injury, to be doing those warm ups and cool downs, or at least some static stretching.
Yeah, I actually did a HIIT session on Tuesday, high intensity interval training, which involved a lot of like lunges, squats, that sort of stuff. And then I went out for a run after, and I was like, this is what it feels like to come out with like a warm up, basically. And I ran a PB 10K as I felt so good. So
That's
yeah.
awesome.
I've definitely learned that. And it's actually, I mean, it's an obvious one, but it's the difference it makes is actually huge. Like you say, you just feel everything's activated and ready, and your body just doesn't feel so tired, which is weird. But yeah, have you ever had a race that hasn't gone your way or hasn't gone as planned? And how did you handle that?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think I definitely plan my races like quite well, I think, in that I spend a lot of time kind of thinking about how I want my race structure to go, thinking about nutrition and practicing with that nutrition. So if that's gels or carb drinks, during long runs and training. So I haven't like had too many races recently that I can think of where I've totally bombed. But there definitely have been like races as I've gone through. I've definitely gotten better at managing the race, and probably that comes through getting more training in as well. If I think back a couple of years ago to the first half marathon race that I did in Oxford, the final few Ks of that, I was like starting to get quads cramping, calves cramping, and there's aspects of that where it's like, okay, maybe it's race management, but also it's probably just not training enough to be able to hit that pace that I wanted to try and hit throughout the race. And maybe a nutrition aspect as well. Like I generally have one gel in a half marathon now, whereas previously I didn't even really think about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can't think of any that I've like really suffered massively. I mean, marathon's always hard in the final few K, final 7 to 10K. But to be fair, I haven't actually run like that many races, in terms of marathons. I've hit sort of few in Dunedin and Helsinki over here, and then otherwise it's mainly been off-road or trail runs.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are different as well. Like when you're doing an ultra, say Kepler Challenge, which is 55, 60K or something, or 3 Peaks plus 1 in Dunedin. I spent actually a lot of time in the Hurt Locker in the 3 Peaks plus 1, where like the climbing is tough, and about 2 hours into a 5.5 hour, 50 something K, I like quads are cramping, and I was having to walk up pretty much every hill from then on. So yeah, there's definitely moments where you're like, okay, that was tough, and I need to manage that a bit better. But it's just all part of the learning.
Yeah. What's going through your head in those last 7 to 10 Ks of a marathon? Like what's the self-talk? What are you saying to yourself?
So I suppose now that I'm kind of have been taking it more seriously, trying to like target, say, a 2:30 marathon would be the target next year, or even sub 2:30 potentially. I'm thinking of it in terms of trying to build pace as much as possible, because in a long distance like the marathon, you just can't go out above your lactate threshold, because that's when you end up bonking and just hitting the wall, or you see that kind of classic taper off towards the end of a marathon. And so first kind of 10K, I'm running out a few seconds, maybe 5 to 10 seconds below target pace. And then the middle kind of 20K, I'm trying to hit target pace. And then final 10K, even though you're starting to get tired in terms of your muscles, that's when you really want to try and push on, and because you can maintain a faster pace in that above that lactate threshold, and you've only got another maybe 40 minutes or so, an hour and a half, depending on how long you're running, to be kind of trying to alleviate that lactic acid buildup in your muscles. Whereas if you do that in that first 10K, then you've got to run 30K where you can't flush that lactic anymore. So I suppose it's tough and it's hard, but if you've managed the race well, then you kind of know, okay, this is going to hurt a little bit, but I've managed it well. So it becomes a mind over matter thing. You just keep the legs moving, keep pumping the arms, and the legs follow. And it's just ticking off kilometer by kilometer as you come towards the end. I think there's usually a threshold around like 37, 38K, where maybe around that kind of 30, 36, 37, you're like, oh, I don't know that I'm going to be able to maintain this pace to the end. But then you get to that like 38 and you're like, okay, it's just a park run to go, 5Ks, and then you start to be able to just tick those down and think, okay, now I've only got 20 minutes, 15 minutes, 10 minutes to maintain this. And then, the finish pulls you in.
Yeah, that is exactly what I do when I'm pushing. I'm like, right, just 25 minutes to go. You can do it. 25 minutes of pain, and it's all over. I'm counting down via time. I'm like, yes, I know I can do this. 25 minutes.
Yeah, and you start doing those little calculations in your head.
Yes.
Now that I've started even doing like tracks, I'm like, okay, even in the final 800, I'm like, okay, just 2 laps of the track. Like I can sprint this,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I do find though that if I'm counting down time, that it makes me run faster when I shouldn't be. I'm like, if I can just like pick up my pace, then it will be over sooner, and then you end up finishing your run absolutely gassed because you're counting down the times. But
You always
that's
have those little surges in a race, though. Like in any event, you might run a K faster and then need to pull it back a little bit, or even in the shorter
yeah,
distances, like you watch the 800 or 1500 middle distance races with Jakob and Josh Kerr and co, and like you'll find that they'll have little surges and then they'll back off and then surge and back off. It's just a natural thing that happens in a race. It's hard to
yeah,
just be like, okay, I'm going to maintain that same pace consistently for
yeah,
the whole thing.
yeah. So a big part of it, I guess, is just being aware of of your pace and what's going on.
Yeah, and particularly at the start of any distance race, it's the temptation is because you're feeling so good, and so that pace that your target marathon pace or half marathon pace is going to feel really easy, and you're going to feel like you can push, but you're really having to just like sit back and kind of bank the energy rather than banking the time. Because
Yeah,
people often think, oh yeah, I'll just bank a few seconds, maybe 10 seconds per K for the first 10K. But then if you end up bonking at the end and dropping your pace by half a minute to a minute, you end up losing far more. Whereas if you can conserve the energy in that first 10 to 15K and then really push on and increase your pace, say 10 or 20 seconds, maybe even more, you might even be able to, finish 30 seconds per K faster than your target pace in that final few kilometers. Then you easily make up that time that you
yeah,
otherwise would have lost at the end. So it's so hard to do because it's counterintuitive in terms of how you're feeling, like pushing
yeah,
harder when you're feeling tired. But yeah, I think it's all of this sort of psychological aspect of the racing that I really enjoy as well, and I find fascinating.
yeah. It's definitely psychological, isn't it? Just talking to yourself for, however long it takes and doing the math, trying to, work everything out while also being super tired. I mean, it's a fun challenge for sure. Um, but yeah, that's definitely running. So on top of your training, how do you balance your training and working? Because I don't know about you, but when I come back from a hard run, I am so tired, and the last thing that I want to do is work. I just want to get into bed and sleep.
Yeah, I think the fatigue that builds up as you're trying to increase mileage is definitely one of the challenges. But in terms of work and running, I mean, I find generally a morning run gets me in a great mindset more than it does in a bad one in terms of the fatigue. Later on in the day, it might be a little bit more tough in terms of fatigue, but initially, like I think that, there's quite a lot of research out there that shows 30 minutes or so of exercise in the morning, even just going for a walk, or a jog or a run, really can improve, your mental focus and things like that.
Hmm.
So yeah, I do try and get out earlier, or do a morning run most days. I'm lucky that I have quite a flexible working situation, so doing research, like it's more driven by the deadline and by delivering what needs to be delivered in terms of the data analysis or a publication or lab work or whatever that is.
Mm.
So I can run at different times. I can do lunchtime runs often, and I can run in the evening as well.
Yeah. But do you
Yeah.
find that if you were to like go like are you structuring your runs so that if you're running in the morning they're not too hard, that they're easy so you can do the rest
Mm.
of the day? Is that a part of how you balance it, or like what if you do
Yeah.
a track session in the morning and you finish it and you're wrecked, or does that just not happen?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. So yeah, I guess I never really do a track session in the morning. Track sessions are structured on Tuesday evenings in terms of going to that running club.
Hmm.
I have started trying to do some sort of double threshold days on a Tuesday to try and make the most of one of those big days. In which case, yeah, that's the one day where I have been hitting threshold in the morning, but it's sort of like a half session because I know I'm then going to go and do that session later on in the evening. And that I've only started doing that in the last few weeks, so I probably haven't noticed the difference in terms of fatigue on that day. But otherwise, yeah, every morning run is pretty much an easy run.
Okay.
So yeah, if I'm doing a hard session, like say I have a tempo session or a threshold session of intervals will be on a Tuesday evening, and then maybe a tempo session on a Thursday evening, and then a long run on a Saturday or a Sunday that involves some sort of speed work in there as well. Whereas otherwise, yeah, all those morning runs are generally at an easy pace. So I suppose that does allow you to set yourself up for the day, getting that exercise in, but also not burning out.
Yeah. I need to take note of this because I find it, I don't know if it's just where I'm at in my running. Obviously, we're at very different levels, where I just finish a run. I don't know if it's a stage that you're at where I finish a run and I'm just always so knackered. And then I come back and I'm like, I don't know, I feel, but maybe that just means that I need to slow it down even further or something. And maybe, not go so hard on each run. Things
Yeah,
to think
maybe. I
about.
mean, I think I definitely know the feeling, like coming back on a Saturday after, if I've done a park run, often I'll do like a 5K and then run the park run and then do a 5K, do it like a park run sandwich, try and make it a longer run with a bit of a tempo in there. And then, yeah, you'll come back and I will often be wrecked. But it's a nice feeling because like you've gotten out, you've done that early on a Saturday and then you can have a shower and sometimes even just jump back into bed and have a nap, or chill out on the couch for a bit. And yeah, that definitely, there is fatigue there, but I would say probably if people are feeling that fatigue or you're feeling that fatigue after every run, then yeah, you're probably still going out a little bit too hard, and those regular runs, and just to drop it back a little bit. The other
Bloody
aspect to
Strava.
it, exactly, the temptation is too strong. The other aspect is to try and get some good nutrition in post run. So that's something that I've brought in more recently, just having some sort of recovery shake, which is, I've got this one I got off Amazon for reasonably cheap, that has carbs, protein, electrolytes in it. And that helps a lot, especially after a session, just getting that recovery in. But otherwise, yogurt or something with a decent amount of protein really does make a big difference to the recovery. And electrolytes, I think often people don't realize like how much you're losing that sodium, potassium, even magnesium as well in a run, and just having some sort of electrolyte tabs that you can take post run helps a lot.
Yeah. Okay, that's good to know. Are you talking like your drink from Amazon? Is that like a Huel, a version of a
Yeah, it's probably
Huel?
Huel. I think is a bit more kind of premium. I think
Yeah.
my one was just, it's called like Recovery Mix. I can't remember what it's called. It might be like by the Protein Lab, or yeah, I'm not sure. But
Yeah.
it's like when I was gymming, I would always have some sort of whey-based protein. It just massively
Yeah.
helps with DOMS, right? It means you can go out a couple of days later and you're not like totally
Yeah.
sore. And so it's the same with running. You're working your muscles, you're working your body quite a lot. So and your body needs that kind of that input, that protein input, relatively soon after a run. Otherwise, that's when you start to feel a little bit more sore. So I definitely noticed the difference.
Yeah. These are all things that I'm learning on my YouTube running journey from everyone,
Yeah.
and from this
And it's
conversation
not that
right
everyone
here.
needs to do this though. Like, I think,
No.
I didn't do it for a long time, and you don't necessarily need to go out and spend money on a shake. Like you can get protein just from, having some eggs, or as I said, some sort of protein yogurt or something like that. But yeah, it's like probably kind of warming up, warming down, stretching, dynamic stretching beforehand, static stretching afterwards, and nutrition, and then getting adequate rest. Like those are all the things around the actual running itself that for me, have allowed me to kind of increase mileage, increase speed, and work harder when I need to be, to get the results.
Yeah. So true. So what does the future hold? You're talking sub 2:30 marathon. Is that your next goal? What have you got lined up? I see you're
Yeah, so
increasing your runs, so you've got something in the pipeline, do you?
yeah, so I've got the London qualification, which that was the target, that was the goal at Helsinki. So like there, the goal was to run it was only a sub 2:55 to potentially qualify in terms of good for age. But they take the fastest first in terms of the people that apply. And I think this year was a record of like maybe 80,000 people tried to enter the ballot. So it is a massive event. I know New York had 50,000 runners at it recently. So it just shows like the running world is totally booming. And which I think is overall is a great thing. It's probably one of the key things that people can do for their health, both physically and mentally, in terms of getting all those health benefits. But yeah, so it becomes a lot more competitive. So I was probably targeting a 2:45 was kind of the B goal maybe at Helsinki, and then A goal was closer to 2:40, and I managed to run a 2:41. Strava says 2:39, but the official time is always longer because you never just run a 42.2. The courses, you never run the blue line all the way around the course, so always have a little bit of extra distance there. So probably if I can target a half and do a sub 70 half, that should set me up for being able to do a sub 230. That's just what the translation of times would enable. So I think I never would have thought, like this time last year, I definitely wouldn't have thought I was going to be potentially hitting a sub 230 marathon next year. But who knows what the limit is? Like if I can, I might target that as like an A goal in London. B goal would be 230 to 235, and then C goal would just be the PB, so sub 240. But if I can do a 230 there, then maybe in autumn go and do Berlin, or possibly even Chicago, or maybe Valencia first week of December, then yeah, I might be able to go anything in the 220s. Which yeah, that'll be cool just to see what I can do. And so yeah, at the moment, just trying to build up that mileage to see how the body holds up. I've always had problems with calves. Has been my like typical muscle group that I tend to find gets a little bit niggly. So yeah, there's a few niggles there, just trying to like manage them, not cause any tears or strains that cause me to have to be out for a few weeks. But if I can sort of maintain, I've never really run more than like even 30 or 40 miles. So, like 60, 70 kilometers a week. So it's really only this last little period where I'm sort of pushing into that kind of 70 to 80 miles a week, 115 to 120 kilometers, where if you really do want to run those kind of sub 230 times, I think you need to be getting that mileage up there. But I've been able to run pretty quick times off just that kind of lower, 60 to 70 Ks. So if I can get that kind of mileage up around 120 Ks for maybe a 12-week block from January to April next year, then yeah, it'll be fun to see how I can go in London.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just incredible. I'm so proud of you. You're a top runner. Well, top runner to me. Maybe,
yeah.
But you
there's
are.
A lot of, that's what you realize when you come over to somewhere like London, is there's a lot of people running my sort of pace. And like London next year, there'll be like 500 people who will run a sub 230, maybe even more, I think. Which will be awesome. I'll be able to literally be going along in a group, and that makes a big difference to hitting those times as well, as when you've got a group around you. And that's the same with joining the running club, and partly why I've been able to see such big improvements recently, I think, is just having kind of people around that are all pushing themselves, all running at those paces.
Yeah, so true, so true. It makes you realize what's possible, doesn't it? Like being around people who are striving.
Yeah, and so for anyone wherever they're at, like being able to get into an environment where you can be pushing yourself and being pushed by other people, I think we can always do more than what we think we'll be able to. Kipchoge's classic line is "No human is limited," which I'm like, well, it's kind of not true. Like even he was limited by 2 hours in the marathon. But it's a nice idea that we can always do more than what we think we can.
Yeah, that's so true. And I think that's that's why running is so great, because you come into it with an expectation that you are X, and then within a few months, few weeks, few days, you become Y, and the way that you look at yourself changes, and what you can do, your potential, and your limit. You're like, oh, maybe I can run a sub 230 marathon. Maybe I can run 50 kilometers. Maybe I can run a half, everything changes and your perspective changes, and you just grow. And I think that's definitely every runner, I feel like, would be able to agree with that.
Yeah, I think that mindset shift is a massive part of it. James Clear talks about this in his Atomic Habits book, where there's a positive feedback between just like building up that kind of that 1% habit. So just sort of continually getting out and running. And then it becomes an identity shift where you're not just someone who's going for a run, but you become a runner. And I don't know exactly, I couldn't pinpoint when that happened for me, because I do think it's something that just builds up over time, and it's this positive feedback cycle. But it is a really nice thing that happens and it's applicable to any physical or spiritual discipline or anything, that the more you do practice something, then the more you kind of become that thing, as opposed to just, and it's less forced. It becomes less of okay, I need to just will myself to go out and do this thing, go out for a run. But you just do it because you're a runner. And now if I go for a day and I don't go for a run, or maybe 2 days, I'm itching to get out. Whereas, a few years ago, I could easily go for a couple of weeks, even a month, and not run, and I wouldn't necessarily have that desire there that I do now.
Yeah, so true. Well, thank you so much for this chat. I've honestly loved it. I'm going to go out for my second run today.
Yeah, I'll probably get out for one lunchtime run after this, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm feeling inspired. But yeah, thank you so much. Was there anything else you wanted to add?
No, it's been enjoyed the conversation, Saravinda. Thanks for the opportunity to chat. And good luck with your running journey. I'm seeing you getting some cool distances, like upwards of 30 Ks, and doing some big trail runs in Dubai, which I can't imagine how hot it must be getting out into the backcountry out there.
It's such a grind, but it's fun. Like you say, just pushing yourself and seeing what you're capable of. Like, again, if I was to reflect back to me a few years ago, there, absolutely no way. I can remember even meeting up with you to play Frisbee in London, and you told me you'd run a half marathon before a game, and then you came out and played Frisbee, and you were like the fastest person on the field. And for me at that moment, I remember you saying that and being like, I was like, he's crazy. How has he done this? And now I'm like, yeah, I get that. I get it. So definitely seeing the change and stuff of what's possible and what people are capable of has been super cool. And I'm excited to see where it takes me. And for yourself as well. I'm excited to see you get that sub 2:30. Let's go.
Yeah, let's see what we can do.
Yeah. Thank you, Sam.
Cool.
If you've made it this far through the podcast, thank you so much for listening. It means the world to me. Please do share this around, comment, like, subscribe. I'd love to hear from you. And if you're feeling up to it and you want to share your own story, please do reach out. Whether you're a friend or a stranger, I'd love to hear from you. Remember, sharing is caring, and you never know who you'll help with your own story. Thanks again, and see you on the next one.